our divine priestess of Watatsumi is finally released, and just like every character before her, there is so much detail behind every aspect of her design. In this video, I'm going to be discussing her real-life inspirations as well as her visual designs, talent names, and her constellation. Now this may come as a surprise video because I originally planned to release War on Yashiori Island next, which I will in the next days to come. However, I wanted to first know if there are possible explanations for what really happened in Yashiori Island in Kokomi's story quest, and if she really had no knowledge about some of her troops releasing the Tatarigami. Now then, let us go back to the topic at hand, which is discussing the character design of Kokomi. As a disclaimer, most of these will be speculations, so if you have anything to correct or add, feel free to comment it down below. Also, if you're new here, be sure to check out my other videos about Kazuha and Kujusara afterward. With that said, let's get right into it. Everything about Kokomi revolves around the sea and its wildlife, but her constellation has a different meaning. Kokomi's constellation is Dracaena Somnolenta. It is worth noting that her constellation could hold some meaning to her identity because the term somnolenta is a feminine version of the Latin word somnolentus, which means sleepy or drowsy. Now you may be wondering, how does that describe her personality? First, let us analyze the other term, Dracaena. The name Dracaena is derived from the Greek word Dracaena, which means female dragon. It is the feminine form of Drakon, which is the ancient Greek for dragon or serpent. Ancient Greeks described most Dracaenas as a sacred female spirit dragon, having some features of a human woman, and can generally be slain only by gods or demigods. Examples of this are Zeus slaying Delphine and Campe, Apollo slaying Python, and Argus slaying Echidna. All of these women are Dracaena, described to have the head and torso of a woman. Now going back to its derivation, Dracaena. Nowadays, this word refers to a type of plant referred to as the dragon tree. So if we put them together with the meaning of somnolenta, Dracaena Somnolenta will translate to a sleeping dragon. Now how does this translation of sleeping dragon be connected with Kokomi? This is because this title is a reference to the military expert Kong Ming, who lived during the Three Kingdoms era of Chinese history, and was called Wolong or Fulong, meaning crouching dragon or sleeping dragon. This is because Kong Ming was no ordinary tactician. Instead, he was described as the most accomplished tactician of his era, having been compared to Sun Tzu, the author of The Art of War. Also, the phrase sleeping dragon in Chinese means potent and auspicious strength. Kong Ming's reputation as an intelligent and learned scholar grew even while he was living in relative seclusion or in the state of being private and away from other people. Now I think this is a well thought out definition for Kokomi's character, as she is said to also have insane knowledge about the art of war, and is a brilliant mastermind that had multiple victories against the shogunate army. Examples of her accomplishments were when she used guerrilla tactics to fight the shogunate in Kanazuka Island, earning them a victory. It is quite relevant that Kokomi's other title is Hibernating Homebody Strategist, which means that she prefers to not be on the field and would rather stay indoors while preparing different tactics for her troops to follow, which is similar to how her real-life counterpart, Kong Ming, used to do during the Three Kingdoms era. To summarize, Kokomi's constellation means the sleeping dragon, and was inspired by Kong Ming, who was known as the most brilliant strategist during the Three Kingdoms era, and it is quite impressive if MiHoYo used this inspiration to serve as Kokomi's constellation. As we continue with the rest of this video, we will further see the connection between Kokomi and the sea. The name Kokomi is originally Japanese, of course, which means that it is constructed of these characters called kanji. Each one has its own set of possible meanings and readings, and they are often combined to create different words. Her first name, Kokomi, is said to have different meanings because of how many ways it can be written. But to break it down, the first part of her name, Ko, is a shortened version of the term kokoro, meaning mind, heart, or spirit. If used in repetition, which is Koko. It will use this character, and is particularly combined with this, which is part of Sango, meaning coral. Now as for the second part of her name, it means sea or ocean. So to add all that, the name Kokomi can be translated as the mind or heart of the sea, possibly because of how Kokomi now leads her people who emerged from the sea and symbolizes her military prowess as a strategist. Another possible interpretation is that Kokomi seems to take inspiration from Otohime of Japanese mythology. In-game, we can see that Kokomi is a priestess that worships their god Orobashi, and he seems to be the Genshin version of Ryujin, the Japanese god of sea, represented by a sea dragon. Otohime is Ryujin's daughter, princess, and protector of their coral palace. When Otohime appears on land, she can transform herself into a serpent. Thus one possible translation for Kokomi's name is Serpent Heart. Because in ancient times, it was believed that snakes were young versions of dragons. This also connects with her surname Sangonomiya, which means coral shrine, and was inspired by the coral palace I mentioned earlier. This is definitely very relevant for a character who has a hydrovision. In terms of Kokomi's talent names, there is a lot to break down, so let's go roughly from the first to the last talent. Now Kokomi's talent names are a combination of Greek and Japanese words. Her elemental skill, named Kurage's Oath. The term Kurage is the Japanese word for jellyfish, which reflects her attack animations of how she floats in a flowing movement. It also makes sense because when casting this skill, Kokomi brings out a jellyfish that can both heal and deal hydro damage. Her elemental burst, Nereid's Ascension, is of Greek origin because the term Nereid means to any of the daughters, numbering 50 or 100, of the sea god Nereus, and they were described to be the good mermaids of legend due to their helpful personality. Now as to why Nereid's Ascension, it can be a reference to Kokomi's mermaid-like appearance and her rise of power as the divine priestess. Next is her first passive talent, Tamanoya's Casket, which is a reference to Tamanoe no Mikoto, a god from Japanese mythology. Known as an ancestral deity of jewel-making clans in Japan, as well as a maker of magatama, which is a comma-shaped bead. Because Tamanoya was the god of Tama or magatama, he was worshipped by jewel and watchmakers because crystal is used for them, and also by glasses and camera traders or makers because a lens is sometimes called tama in Japanese. Her second passive talent, Song of Pearls, can be a reference to the Songs of the Pearl, taken from the book of John Steinbeck, titled The Pearl. It basically tells us that there are 3 songs from which the main character in the book can hear. The Song of Family represents balance and content. The Song of Evil represents unbalance and danger, while the Song of the Pearl represents greed and what greed can do to human beings. In this book, a pearl is a symbol of wealth, which is quite ambivalent in its nature throughout the novel. But like wealth, the pearl represents all the evil in the world, and it seems that all the greed and evil surface in the presence of wealth. Now as to how this connects with Kokomi, it is unsure until we know more about her in her story quest. For her third passive talent, Princess of Watatsumi can be translated to Princess of the Sea, because of how the term Watatsumi may be used to refer to the sea itself. To dig in deeper, Watatsumi or Wadatsumi is also the name of the Japanese god of the sea, often believed to be another name for the dragon god Ryujin, which I mentioned earlier. Overall, it is really mind-blowing that there are a lot of these references in just Kokomi's talent names, and some of them reflect Kokomi's background as a whole. However, there are more references that can be found in her constellation names, so let us dig into that next. Kokomi's constellation names all have a connection with either the moon or the sea, and it is quite fascinating that she also has a hydrovision, which is the element for water. Her C1, at water's edge, can be a metaphor for how she can walk on water while her elemental burst is active. Her C2, the clouds like waves rippling, could describe the wave clouds, a cloud formation where each cloud often runs parallel, but can also appear to interweave across the sky, forming a wave-like appearance. Her C3 and C4 are all centered around the theme of a moon overlooking the sea, which could symbolize Kokomi's governance over her people. Her C5, all streams flow to the sea, can refer to the meaning of how small rivers and streams may join together to become large forms of water, which can indicate how the people of Watatsumi are all united and would flow together like a stream, headed to its destination. As for C6, Sango Ishin, it is quite different to tell because the term Ishin has 30 variations. Some possible translations for Ishin are one mind or one's whole heart. Now, remember I mentioned earlier that Sango means coral, so if we put them together, Sango Ishin could translate to a heart of coral, because of how Orobashi once broke a coral that grew from its body to create Watatsumi Island, so its people could live above the surface. Another interesting thing is that her birthday is February 22, which means Kokomi has a zodiac sign of Pisces, which symbolizes a fish. Moving on to Kokomi's visual design, it gives a certain theme of the sea, and the scallop shell design on her back adds to that theme. This scallop shell may signify its ties to the Greek goddess Aphrodite, as well as her Roman counterpart, Venus, the Roman goddess of love, beauty, prosperity, and victory. This is because the scallop shell is where Venus is symbolically born out of. The best-known pre-modern reference to the scallop shell is from Sandro Botticelli's The Birth of Venus painting from 1452. These traits of love, beauty, prosperity, and victory seem like they can relate to her role as the leader of the Sangonomiya resistance. Lastly, her clothes have patterns similar to that of the fins of a fish, in the same way that fins allow fish to have control over their movements. This can be a metaphor wherein Kokomi is in control of the resistance and known as the brains of her people's forces. We can also easily see the divine priestess look in her expanded sleeves and twin-tailed gown. Her peach-colored hair and purple twin tiaras easily capture the essence of Watatsumi Island. Meanwhile, the overlapping parts on her garment reflect both fluidity and calculated movements which mirror a part of her personality. Personally, I must say Kokomi is one of the best visually designed characters in Genshin Impact to date, on par with Kazuha, Hu Cao, Xiao, Noelle, and Ningguang. Genshin's character designs are continuing to prove to be top-notch, as MiHoYo managed to make Kokomi look classy with her outfit, fashioned around the aquatic theme like that of a mystical fish. Now I look forward to how MiHoYo will pull off the character designs for the remaining regions with Sumeru as the next being planned. Now that's it for this video, and I hope this was entertaining and educational for you. Also, let me know what you personally like about Kokomi, and tell me if you're also gonna pull for her. You can always share it down in the comments. As always, thank you for watching. I'm Clementine. Stay tuned and be safe.